You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Cole Cabana, and you are listening to the Angry Marks Podcast. You are an Angry Mark, and you are listening to a podcast.
You're listening to the Undisputed Wrestling Show with your hosts, the Prophet, Rick Craig, the Bearded Wonder, Zane Paisley, and the Morning Star, William Huckabee.
Well, Joel, I've got two more questions for you. Can you tell our listeners about the Boston Pro Wrestling Marathon coming up in March 2015?
I sure can, yeah. The Boston Pro Wrestling Marathon is going to be a wrestling convention at its core. There are also going to be live events, and there's also going to be it's going to be a weekend-long thing, and I'm hoping that there will also be a Joel Gertner Everything But the Wrestling seminar. Hopefully we can bring that to Boston as well.
Which you did at the Monster Factory recently, right?
I did. I've done two of them. Excuse me. I've done two of them so far. I did one in August in suburban Philly or in South Jersey at the Monster Factory, and I did one a couple of weeks ago in Miami before Ronin Pro Wrestling 1 at the Airport Convention Center. Yeah. And hopefully we get one up to Boston in early March. But if it's that, then it's that. And it's also, again, a convention, autograph signing, and meet and greet. It's going to be shows, multiple shows with some of the best talent out there. It's really going to be it's not just an all-day long wrestling, convention or event, but it is a weekend-wide convention and wrestling event and gathering, international gathering of wrestling fans in Boston. I want to say in Quincy, at the Armory, is where the shows are going to be. But for more details, definitely look into the Boston Pro Wrestling Marathon. They do have an Instagram page. They are on Twitter. They are on Facebook. And I believe they've got a website as well. But if you Google Boston Wrestling Marathon, the Boston Pro Wrestling Marathon, you will find it. It is, I want to say, the March 6, 7, 8 weekend or 7, 8, 9 weekend. But it's that second weekend kind of in March. But you'll find it if you look for it, and you really should, because it's going to be unbelievable. Not just will there be fans gathering from around the world, but there's going to be talent from here, there, and everywhere. Some guys who haven't worked Boston before. Some guys who work Boston and are well-loved in Boston for local fans. Some guys who started their careers in Boston have geographically relocated to other parts of the country so that they don't really work Boston anymore. And for them, it's a homecoming. One guy that comes to mind is Kid Mikaze, the American Sasuke Mikaze. So, guys like that, as somebody who, has lived in New England, kind of. I live in Waterbury, Connecticut, which is kind of a cross market between, Metro New York City and southern New England. But I promoted in Connecticut, under the MXW banner. And a lot of the talent was from further up north or further into New England, living in places like Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, other spots in Connecticut. And, so to be somebody who not only has performed, with ECW in, the Boston area at, the Wonderland, Greyhound Park in Revere or the Worcester Palladium, but also who has promoted, a number of shows in Connecticut. It's going to be great to be back up in Boston with some of the best wrestling fans that you'd ever want to hang out with or have in the audience at your show. And so I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, look that up for sure, Boston Pro Wrestling Marathon, and you can find out more updates and information from them or from me through all of my social media.
So how was Raw last night in your hometown of Brooklyn?
Yeah, Raw was great. I love the fact that that WWE wrestling is back in Brooklyn. Wrestling has always been in Brooklyn. Wrestling is never going to leave Brooklyn. It's a great wrestling town. yeah, there's more to New York City, even as far as WWE goes, than Madison Square Garden now. You know, Madison Square Garden's got a big cousin, or a little brother, or, you know, if you're a Brooklynite, a big brother, but a twin brother. But yeah, you know, wrestling was here to stay in Brooklyn. That's certainly, you know, where I cut my teeth and where I watched all of my early wrestling on TV, obviously. You know, it's where I grew up. But it's also, you know, a lot of independent shows, in Brooklyn. And, as a matter of fact, you know, came full circle, and this past weekend, Friday and Saturday, worked for FWE Wrestling, here, really not just in Brooklyn, but also in my zip code, right in the neighborhood, about a mile and a quarter up the road. Did 2 internet pay-per-views for them. So a lot of great wrestling fans in Brooklyn. And yeah, so I was at Raw last night. I think that's the 5th time that WWE has been to the Barclays Center since it opened about 2 years ago. And I've been to all 5. It's going to be tricky to be at the 6th one because it is head up with the Boston Pro Wrestling Marathon, which is where I'll be. But I don't know that they need me the second half of Saturday. So I might be able to make some magic happen, put my money where my mouth is, and tell wrestling fans that they should definitely travel and see every show they can, because I might be doing that myself that week. But yeah, Barclays Center is a great new arena, a wonderful place to experience live professional wrestling, especially if it's a TV taping or a pay-per-view. But they have done one house show already, and that was a really, really fun time also with some great wrestling. I remember Bo Dallas and Sami Zayn were a tag team at the house show, and that was an unbelievable match that they were in, and they got a great reaction too, even though they weren't, you know, very well known from TV at the time. So yeah, it was a blast this year.
Okay, Joel, it's time to kick out a brand new segment here on the Undisputed Wrestling Show. It's Kick Out or Tap Out with Joel Gertner. Okay? I'm going to rattle off 10 questions to you. I want you to answer them the best of your ability and elaborate if possible. A brief elaboration, I should say. If you can't answer the question, you're tapping out, brother.
Okay.
You ready?
Got it.
Question number 1. Most underrated ECW wrestler ever?
Oh my gosh. Most underrated ECW wrestler ever. You know, the first person that comes to mind is Chris Hamrick, just because of how long he's been in the business, all of his skills. Every time I see him take that one bump where he kind of goes through the ropes and takes a back bump on the concrete, he's definitely underrated. There were so many guys that, whether it was a timing issue and they came in at the end and didn't have the time to move up the ladder, whether it was that or for any other reason, you know what I mean? Like, Christian York and Joey Matthews, were underrated in the sense that I don't think they ever got to the level that they would have eventually gotten to. But there were so many great guys. I mean, everybody that was originally in Team Taz and they were out of Taz's school, all those guys were great.
Joel, I'm never going to get to 10.
I'm going Hamrick.
Brief elaboration. All right, number 2, most overrated ECW wrestler of all time.
Oh my gosh. As a wrestler, I don't know, me, because I'm 3-0 undefeated, with most of it on pay-per-view, right? I mean, I wrestled Cyrus and beat him.
Come on.
By having a training, you know, I ate Lucky Charms and didn't really exercise much, so I don't know, maybe me? I don't know.
All right.
You know what? I'll fall on my sword. I'll take one on the chin there. Me. Overrated wrestler? Me. Yeah.
Okay. Who's the better poet? Joel Gertner or Leaping Lanny Poffo / The Genius?
Who's the better poet? I will let you know what? He was the poet laureate of the World Wrestling Federation and did it with 2 different gimmicks and was in the business when I was still a fan. He is the better poet. And he's published. He's written books. I haven't yet. He's a better poet, but I still am the cunning linguist, and I am a more cunning linguist than Poffo.
All right, Joel. You're in the ring, Joel. Only your hands and feet. No weapons of any kind. You're fighting for your life. Death match. Who wins? The Studmuffin, Joel Gertner, or Joey Styles?
Joel Gertner. Yeah.
You're listening to the Undisputed Wrestling Show with your hosts, the Prophet, Rick Craig, the Bearded Wonder, Zane Paisley, and the Morning Star, William Huckabee.